Rebels for 2019. Rebels, the kind of nearly men last season. It was a pretty remarkable turnaround from bottom place team in 2017. Survived the chop from Super Rugby. Brought on board a fair few players from the Western Force. New coach and almost in the playoffs for the first time in their history, but it wasn't quite to be last season for the Rebels. So what can we expect for them for 2019? How's the squad looking? Who's kind of being transferred in and out? Fixtures list and expectations, all that kind of good stuff. What do the bookies say? So I'll start with the squad. And of all the movers and shakers in terms of teams bringing on players, the Rebels have got a couple of the bigger names compared to a lot of the teams. So propping stocks, Jermaine Ainsley, Ben Daly, Mies Erasmus has come over from the Brumbies. Pone Fa'amusili, I don't remember seeing him last year, but I could be mistaken, but he's still a previous Rebels player. Tetra Faulkner, Feriti Saanga, and Sam Talakai. So not too much in the way of movement there. From memory, Mies Erasmus was kind of a fringe guy. Maybe he didn't even play for the Brumbies last season, so I'm not sure how well he will go for game time. Hookers, Hugh Roach has come over from the Waratahs. And Jordan Ulysses, can he stay fit? That is a big question, because that guy is one of those guys who just seems to have, like you've seen it with Toby Faletau recently with Bath and Wales. Jordan Ulysses is that guy. But he's a lot younger, and he just seems to have the worst luck. So fingers crossed he can stay fit. Two lists I saw. One had Anaru Rangi on the list for the Rebels for 2019. One didn't. So I'm assuming he's still there, because he ended up being a pretty key man for the Rebels last season. There was even talk of him potentially getting a Wallabies call-up. Never happened, though. Locks. Adam Coleman and Matt Phillip will probably be two of the main guys. I saw Sam Jeffries on one list, but again, not on another. So I would assume he's there. Loose forwards, Angus Cottrell, Richard Hardwick, Ross Halett-Petty. Luke Jones is back from France. He may end up playing a bit of lock or may stay in the loose forwards. We'll see. Rob Leota, Brad Wilcombe from the Tars has come over. And perhaps the biggest name signing in the forwards is Issy Nasarani, who's come over from the Brumbies. Big, dynamic, not a tackling machine, but a tackle buster. That's probably what we can expect to see from Izzy in 2019, but this time in blue. For the backs, Will Guinea, Harrison Goddard, and Michael Ruru are your men. So it's probably going to be Guinea starting, although Ruru did really well when Guinea was injured last season. Guinea was a really key man in getting victories earlier, because I think he led try assist stats for a long time, but he just didn't end up playing enough games. Fly halves, Quade Cooper. That's the biggest signing, one of the biggest signings of any team. It's on par with Dwayne Vermeulen going to the Bulls. Quade Cooper is back out from the cold where he was at the Reds, and he's getting some love at the Rebels, so hopefully we can see him in his best form. He's going to be wanting to push for a World Cup berth as well. Hopefully he can get that back line going, because it's one thing that they kind of lacked last year at the Rebels was a top class 10. Matt Tamua is also coming over once he's finished with Leicester Tigers, so we'll see what his form is like, whether he gets a rest before he gets some games, because he's going to have been playing a whole lot of rugby. We may see him at 10 or 12, I suppose. Reece Hodge can play pretty much anywhere in the back line from 10 outwards. So where he gets deployed is also an interesting question. He's got a big boot. Still needs to work on the accuracy of that big boot, but a big boot nonetheless. Billy Meeks, he's been very solid. Sione Tuipulotu, Samisi Tupo, kind of from memory, young guys still coming through. I would imagine Meeks and perhaps also Tom English, who's still around, get in there with perhaps Hodge. I don't know, they've got plenty of options there, the Rebels. Marika Korobiti is still around, and he's signed, I think, an extension at least for 2019. Gets criticised the way the Wallabies deploy him on the defensive side, so we'll see if he's opened up again for the Rebels, because he definitely brings you some X-factor going forward. How can he do defensively? A question. Campbell Magnay has come back from Japan, but he's still only like 22, pretty big guy, so hopefully he does a few things. Stain Halett-Petty, of course, one of the stars for Australia in 2018, and a pretty poor year He had a pretty good season. Jack Maddox came along leaps and bounds. He seems to be a guy that a fair few people don't like. I'm not sure why. I think he seems like a pretty decent player, so I'm looking forward to see him kind of take it up a notch for the 2019 season. So yeah, that's the squad. Who's left? Laurie Weeks is retired. Jeff Parling is retired. He's now coaching. He was the British lock, English lock, who was there last season. Kobe Fainga has gone to Connacht. Lopeti Tamani has gone to France. So they lose a bit of bulk there. Amanaki Mafi has returned to Japan. Him and Tamani had a bit of an incident at the end of last season, so there was no way either of them was going to come back. Mafi is probably the biggest loss by a country mile, because he was a focal point of many an attack for the Rebels last season. He was a leading run meter gainer amongst a bunch of wingers, outside backs. So he was doing phenomenal things for a guy in the forwards, and he is essentially irreplaceable from what I have seen. I mean, Izzy Nasarani is good, but Mafi is a different player. Yeah, he just wants the ball all the time, and they really fed everything through him. I'm not sure Nasarani is a like-for-like replacement. They're both definitely ball-running number 8s, but I don't think we'll see. Like, Nasarani's numbers were nowhere near Mafi's numbers, but different structure, different team setup. Like, he also, his numbers were high because he had a lot of carries, a lot more carries than anybody else as well. So, hey. Debrasini's gone to the Chiefs. He was kind of in and out of the Rebels last season. Ended up having a pretty good Mitre 10 Cup over here in New Zealand, so ended up signing with the Chiefs. Who else is there? David Horwitz has gone to Connacht, and Sefa Naivalu has gone to the Reds. I think that was essentially because the Reds lost Parise to league, so they needed a wing replacement, so they've gone for Naivalu. So he's a bit of a loss, because having Naivalu and Korobedi on the wings certainly gave them a bit of punch, but I mean, you've still got Maddox, Haylett-Petty, Korobedi probably as your starting back 3. Hodge, as I said, can kind of fit in anywhere. Campbell Magnay's this young dude who's come back looking for some rugby, so they got plenty of options. Dave Wessels is coach, and he kind of worked wonders, I thought, last season. I didn't expect the Rebels to quite gel as quickly as they did. They got off to the season with a flying start, but it wasn't something they were able to maintain throughout the whole season. How does the schedule look this year? It's okay, but it's not fantastic. So Brumbies away to start the season, and then a bye in round 2. Perhaps the worst place to have a bye. Like, you've just gotten into the season and then you have a break. I'm not sure anybody wants a bye in week 2, but somebody has to take it. Highlanders at home in week 3, Brumbies at home in week 4, so within 3 games they've played the Brumbies twice, which is again a bit of funny scheduling, but hey, maybe they're trying to build a rivalry between those two teams. Then it's a trip to South Africa, Lions away, Sharks away. That looks like a pretty tough trip. Then again back to Australia, but playing the Reds away, and then back to Melbourne, Sunwolves at home in week 8, Stormers at home in week 9, Waratahs away in week 10, and then a bye in week 11. So for me, that's a pretty hard stretch. You go to Canberra for the first round, have a bye just to disrupt things as you're starting to get the season off to a start. Host the New Zealand team in round 3, which is not the Blues, which is unfortunate. But again, the Highlanders don't travel that well, so perhaps if you're not going to get the Blues, that might be the team to get. Brumbies at home, and then trip to South Africa, no bye, Reds away. Man, it's tough. It's tough. If they go behind here, it could be a rough ride for them. But hey, if they can win in South Africa, that would be some achievement. A bye, as I said, in week 11, and then Hurricanes away in week 12. So they go to New Zealand. Reds at home, Bulls at home, Sunwolves away. So a trip to Japan, back to Australia for the Waratahs at home, Crusaders away, and then Chiefs at home. You wouldn't want to be the Rebels kind of chasing down a much-needed win to seal a playoff spot. If that sounds familiar, that's kind of what they needed in 2018, but weren't able to get it done. And that was against the Reds. This time it's the Crusaders in week 17 in Christchurch, and then the Chiefs at home. So I wouldn't want to be facing the Crusaders or Chiefs and needing a win, but hey, if you're going to get up there, you still need to beat the best teams. They avoid the Blues, which is probably drawing the short straw, because if there's one New Zealand team you want to play, it's the Blues. And they avoid the Jaguares, which I guess avoids a potential trip to Argentina. But yeah, that schedule of Australia, Joburg, Durban, Brisbane, Melbourne in 5 weeks, still not ideal either. So yeah, 7 wins and 9 losses last season. They were equal on points with the Sharks, but didn't qualify based on the factors that they separate the teams on. So they finished 9th. I think that was a pretty good effort. The squad looks pretty good for this coming season, but there's still some things to work on. The scrum is going to need to hold up, and they haven't really made any huge additions there, so they're going to need to do something with that front row to see if they can shore things up a bit, if not dominate, at least be a stable platform. Who's the 10-12 combo is going to be an interesting one, because like I said, you got Reece Hodgson there, you got Tamua and Cooper, so there's plenty of options that they could go with. Still remains to be seen. Discipline, they were the most penalised team in Super Rugby last season, so that's a big factor. And some of that is scrums, getting penalised at scrum time, but not all of that is scrums. Some of that was just poor discipline and consistency. I said they had a flying start to the season. They won 4 out of their first 5. Then after that, they lost 5 in a row. And that's kind of what killed their season. Also, the fact that they really struggled with the non-Australian teams. They only beat the Blues and the Sharks last season of those 7 wins. So 5 of them came against Australian conference opposition. So they're going to need to up their game a wee bit when the Stormers come to town. When the Chiefs are in Melbourne. So it's not going to be easy for them. Also when the Bulls come along. So yeah, that's definitely on the to-do list. And also the winning of pressure games. Like at the end of the last season, they lost. Like they were really in a position where they just needed one more win to get above the Sharks, who were chasing them down. And likewise the Brumbies were as well. But they lost to the Waratahs, which is, again, they were the top Aussie team. So it's not a huge shame in that, but it was a winnable game. Then they lost to the Reds, which was an absolutely must-win, winnable game. And they didn't get it done. They didn't really perform that week. And then they had a loss against the Highlanders away, which doesn't sound that bad, but they had a big lead in that game, and they managed to not end up winning the game. So winning under pressure is also something that Coach Dave Wessels will be looking for. The bookies have got the Rebels finishing 10th equal. So, well, not 10th equal, but there's 3 teams they're picking at a certain odds. So yeah, basically 10th with 2 other teams. So got to be careful with looking at the bookies' odds as predictions, but that's where the betting trends are going. So not predicted to be a playoff contender, but perhaps on that fringe. If a few things go their way, they could be there or thereabouts, but I don't think the schedule's been all that kind to them. Again, how Dave Wessels gets this new set of players to gel in will be key. Hopefully, if Quade Cooper can unlock that back line and the scrum can hold up, I can see big things from the Rebels. But yeah, if they can't get that scrum right, I mean, they've got good locks. You got Adam Coleman there, very good player. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I look forward to seeing how the Rebels go. You guys let me know your thoughts on their season. How do you think they will go? Do you back them to potentially sneak in for a playoff spot for the first time in their history, or do you think they're still going to miss out? Let me know your thoughts, and I will talk to you again soon. See you later.